Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Mirror Dungeon solo video. In today's episode, we'll be running with Faust, a charge identity that excels at debuffing enemies to make them easier for both herself and her allies to deal with. In fact, I'd go as far as to say they're some of the strongest debuffs any identity can inflict. Her skill 3 spends 5 charge to apply both 2 attack power down and 3 paralyze, which essentially completely neuters an enemy on the next turn, allowing you to basically ignore them. Her skill 2, though, applies 4 bind, which is more than enough to force pretty much any enemy to have 1 speed for the following turn. This allows you to basically stun lock a single enemy and just keep wailing on them until they stop moving. Her debuffs make her a lot better and more versatile in regular human fights than in any focus encounter, as they are generally more valuable when you have no control over who's targeting who. And to be fair, this makes a lot of sense when you take into account her job as a W Corp cleanup agent. Despite this though, actually getting the run off the ground is such a massive pain. This identity's biggest weakness is the fact that she both has a blunt weakness and is a Faust identity. These two things coupled together means that every single starting floor, except for the incredibly easy ones that literally any identity could solo and are not worth putting in the video, have one of either lust, gluttony, or blunt damage, meaning they all suck. Of course, this wouldn't be a problem if Faust could actually fuel any of her egos, but they all require lust, with the exception of Hex Nail, which comes with its own problem of not turning off her lust weakness. Speaking of egos, you would be an absolute fool to give up Fluid Sac when you're soloing with Faust, as its sustainability is absolutely invaluable to keeping a run alive. And that's exactly why I chose to run Telepole instead. Now you're probably thinking, what the hell, why are you using Telepole instead of Fluid Sac? Didn't you just say you're stupid if you do that? And to that I have to say, I am stupid, but not because I'm running Telepole. You see, the one thing that Faust lacks is damage, and Telepole provides bonus damage depending on how high your charge stack is. This modifier maxes out at 70% bonus damage with a charge stack of 35. You can achieve 35 by having both multi-cracked Heathcliff support passive and the charge-type glove's Ego Gift. On top of that, Faust spends so little charge that she's pretty much always at a max stack and constantly has that 70% damage modifier. Of course, there were points in the run where I would have preferred having Fluid Sac, but so long as you get a little lucky with the Ego Gifts, you can more or less justify running Telepole instead. For our starting Ego Gifts, we take the portable battery socket and the patrolling flashlight before beginning the run with the Flat Broke Gamblers. The boss for this floor is against Ada, and for the most part it's not that bad. The problem is Ada herself, as she does exclusively blunt damage, which coupled with 4 coin skills and constant sanity regeneration, she certainly packs quite a punch. The biggest challenge when it comes to dealing with her is that she consistently rolls higher speed than her minions, and for the most part of the fight is completely unclashable. The only time we can actually survive her attacks is either if we get lucky and are able to hit her with a skill 2, or relying on an overclocked Hex Nail to randomly target her. Fortunately for us, the former happens, letting us lock her down for at least 2 turns before we run out of skill 2s and thus have to rely on Hex Nail instead. With more than enough skill slots now that we're pretty deep into the fight, it's fairly likely that at least one of them targets her, giving us the edge we need to be able to survive this encounter.
승객이 딱 한 방 먹었어. 신속히 차리지. 방금 공격. 다음에 다른 개체 얘기도 다시 해봐줄래? 영상으로 남기면.
We take wrist guards as our reward and receive Oracle as a bonus before entering Hell's Chicken for the next floor. Here we buy UPS system, Curriculum Vitae, Night Vision Goggles, and Lightning Rod. We also find Tango Marinade before making it to the boss against Papa Bongi. Here we get to see the first glimpse at the power that Telepull grants us. A single use is capable of staggering 2 of the head chickens, which is genuinely preferable to outright killing them, as the amount of attacks coming at us is now a reasonable amount. With a bonus 50% damage from becoming a lightning rod, we can easily fry up some chickens, hoping not to accidentally char them in the process.
여기다가 신속히 차. 생체 반응이 끊어진 개체의 기록이 감지됩니다. 만약 제가 인간이었고 조금 더 쾌활한 성격이었다면 당신과 하이파이브 같은 걸 시도해보았을지도 모르겠네요. 저 개체부터 처리하면 편할 것 같아요. 신속히 처리. 부위 하나가 끊어졌네요. 이제 좀 수월해지겠어요. 칼날이 잘 드네요. 아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠? 적대기. 신속히 처리. 약점. 승객이 딱콩 한 방 먹였어. 효율적인 대처로 개체를 꿰뚫었습니다. 참고로
We take the Material Interference Force Field as our reward and head into Emotional Repression for the next floor, where we find Employee Card and Lowest Star before making it to the boss against the Ambling Pearl. Dealing exclusively blunt damage, the Pearl is quite a terrifying foe. Being weak to gluttony damage as well means that if we don't use an ego the first turn, we are guaranteed to get staggered and lose immediately, forcing us into using Hex Nail in order to survive. The following turn we use both Telepull to get our damage online, and Hex Nail again to return to having neutral gluttony resistance. Doing this, of course, tanks our sanity, but thanks to base Yi-Song's support passive, it's at the very least manageable. As a bonus to doing this, we manage to accidentally play into the Pearl's gimmick, and so another use of Telepull to destroy all of the slime while also clashing with the remaining skills of the Pearl allows us to get a free stagger and a turn of pure damage in. Of course, this isn't nearly enough to defeat the Pearl, but now that we can actually clash with it, it only takes one more quick cycle to be able to finish it off.
개체에게 일격을 가하는데 성공했습니다. 신속히 처리하지. 만렙 충격, 최대치. 와, 방금 어떻게 하신 거죠? 깜짝 놀랐어요. 개체에게 일격을 가하는데 성공했습니다. 적으로 신속히 처리하지. 모두의 희생을 기리며 축소를 드는 것도 나쁘지 않겠죠. 승객이 딱 한 방 먹었다. 요즘 주먹거리는 없어? 신속히 처리하지. 기다리는 거 못해. 신속히 차오르지. 저희 직원들이 개체의 분위를 파괴했어요. 역시 미리 훈련하길 잘했죠? 신속히 차오르지. 상담이 알려준 대로 잘했어. 상담 프로그램이 중요한 건 무엇을 잘못했는지 아는 것보다 개체를 자성하고 있는 부위 중 하나가 파괴되었습니다. 이 틈을 파고들어도 좋을 것 같군요.
We choose Thunder Branch for our reward and head into Time Killing Time for the next floor. Here we buy Illusory Hunt, Bloody Gadget, and Temporal Brittle before fusing Fragment of Friction and the Uncapped Defibrillator. With that, we head into the fight against the Time Ripper. This fight is pretty simple this time around. Without being weak to the Time Killer's attacks, tanking most of them is pretty easy. His robots this time are also of no consequence, as a single use of Telepole is enough to stagger all of them, and then destroy 2 of them the following turn. Telepole, while it is certainly powerful, isn't even the MVP of this fight. No, instead it's actually the ego gift lowest star. It's like having sinking without actually having sinking. And thus, even though the Time Ripper could potentially outroll us, it's very unlikely when he's consistently at neutral or negative sanity. On top of that, the debuffs we inflict with our skill 3 make it virtually impossible for us to lose any clashes, unless of course the dreaded 5% rears its ugly head.
적합한 관리법이었어요. 다행이에요.
죽이겠다고 마음먹었다니.
신속히 차려서. 신속히 막내 충전 최대치.
꽤 나쁘지 않은 공격 방식이었어.
상대는 그걸 한눈에 알고 싶은데.
뭐 이거지.
상담에서 알려준 대로 잘했어. 개체의 유효한 속성을 정확하게 간파했습니다. 제 예상만큼 관리자님의 능력이 요구하는 것이 증명된 것.
방금의 공격이
다행이다.
정답이었다.
방금의 감각은 기억해.
곧 위험한 공격이 찾아올 거예요. 신속히 차려서.
이럴 땐 망설임 없이 공격하는 것이
신속히 차려서. 막내 충전 최대치예요.
저희 직원들이 개체의 부위를 파괴했어요. 역시 미리 훈련하길 잘했죠?
가슴 가장 깊은 곳까지
승객이 딱콩 한 방 먹였어. 쨍그랑 부위가스가 났어.
객체를 구성하고 있는 부위 중 하나가 파괴되었습니다. 이 틈을 파고들어도 좋을 것 같군요. 신속히 처리하자. 약점 파괴.
We take Green Spirit for our reward and head into Murder on the Warp Express for the final floor. Here we buy painkillers, imposed weight, and after desperately spending over 100 Starlight, Blue Zippo Lighter. We also find what I consider to be the 100% required gift to actually be able to solo this floor, the Crystallized Blood. I mean, all you have to do to understand what I mean is just look at this first turn on this random encounter. If you get unlucky and go into a fight against the prosthetic blood bags, they will inflict you with a 25 bleed stack on the first turn. That's enough to kill even the tankiest of identities. Not even Fluid Sac can save you from that. This fight would have genuinely been a run killer if not for the Crystallized Blood. It by itself makes bleed fights doable solo, and it's kind of unfortunate that it's relegated to the final floor only. Maybe Warp can appear as the 4th floor, but I'm not 100% confident on that. Anyway, enough of this fight. We finally managed to fuse the Charge-type gloves and head into the final boss against Cassetti. Starting this fight off, we're in for a pretty good time. All of the enemies here are weak to envy damage, which means a single telepole is enough to stagger 3 of them, letting us focus on the unstaggered in the meantime while we build up our skill slots. As we slowly pick each enemy off one by one, I try my best to exclusively use skill 1s in order to save as many 2s and 3s as possible for Cassetti himself. Just like in the Time Ripper fight, lowest star shows off how useful it can be against enemies that can outroll you. Cassetti doesn't do his big AoE heal attack until he reaches around 70% HP or somewhere around there, and it's fairly interesting to note that Bind does absolutely nothing to stop this. An interesting form of counterplay that you could pull off in this fight is to have the E-type Dimensional Dagger Ego gift and attack Cassetti with as many Envy skills as you can with W-Corp identities when he uses his AoE heal. However, to actually pull this off, you need every identity to roll over 10 speed because Bind does nothing. He could be inflicted with over a million Bind and he would still roll a 10 speed because the game just auto-sets it to that. It's a little frustrating because it completely invalidates W. Faust's main purpose in this fight. I mean, why else would you use her in this fight other than to use a skill 2 right before he uses his AoE heal, which would then set his speed to 6 and allow you to more consistently outspeed him and inflict a bunch of HP healing down so he doesn't heal that much. It's like, ugh, Project Moon, fix your game. Fortunately, it doesn't matter that much for us, as he doesn't really heal that much when there's only one identity on the field. And we also don't have the Dimensional Dagger, so it wouldn't really matter in the first place. As soon as he does heal though, he gets a bunch of offense level, making it much more difficult to win clashes, but just like with the Time Ripper, lowest star and Faust skill 3 debuffs are more than enough to keep him in check.
생체 반응이 끊어진 객체의 기록이 감지됩니다. 신속히 처리하자. 처리했어.
직원들이 개체를 제압하는 데 성공했어요.
신속히 처리하자.
칼날이 잘 드네요. 아마 그 공격이 약점이었겠죠? 요즘 도망다리는 없어?
신속히 처리하자.
방금 공격 다음에 다른 개체에게도 다시 해봐줄래? 영상으로 남기면 다른 주변에게도 도움이 될지도 몰라.
개체로부터 기이한 태세가 보이는군요. 신속히 처리하죠.
요즘 고민 따위는 없어?
신속히 처리하죠.
승객이 딱 한 방 먹었어. 하루 기다리는 거 못해. 100초만 기다려줄게.
신속히 처리하죠. 효율적인 대처로 개체를 꿰뚫었습니다. 참고로 기계는 입에 박인 말 따위 쉽게 하지 않아요. 신속히 처리하죠.
적들이 흔들흔들.
신속히 처리하죠. 파우스트, 이번 작전도 완벽히 종료.
And that's how I soloed Mirror Dungeon 4 hard using only W Faust. A very good and reliable debuffer who can consistently keep even the most threatening of enemies in check. Telepulse certainly makes her a lot better as it actually gives her decent DPS on top of being a solid debuffer. Although I can't recommend doing a solo run without Fluid Sac. I was able to do it, but when I needed it, oh boy could I feel it. Anyway, that's it from me. Like and subscribe to not miss next time where we'll be using this identity. Goodbye!